Welcome viewers and listeners to another edition of Globespan 24x7, owned and operated by Mr. Nohar Singh, with Devin Bisoon as the techie operator. I am Vishnu Bisram, your host and moderator for tonight's edition of Globespan 24x7. Tonight we'll be discussing the political state and plans of the political opposition in Guyana. And our guest tonight is a member of parliament, Mr. Ganesh Mahipal, and another opposition, but not a member of parliament, an opposition figure, a very senior attorney, senior counsel, Mr. Timothy Jonas of Anug in New and United Guyana. Welcome, folks. Thank you for joining us this evening. Before we begin our program, we do have a video which we will show, and then we will have comments from the two esteemed gentlemen.
I believe in constitutionality. I believe in constitutional governance. Constitutional governance requires a vibrant, effective, competent opposition. I want our government to face a strong and vigilant and competent opposition.
Do we have a strong and efficient, competent opposition, Ganesh?
Thank you very much, Dr. Vishnu Bisram, for having me on your program. You know, at first when I was asked, there was a sort of reluctancy. But when I heard that I would be in the company of educated, energized young men, I felt as though it is necessary to join with you and my friend Timothy Jonas. And I must say that it is a pleasure. And to answer your question directly, I do believe that we have a very competent opposition that is holding the government's feet to the fire. There is that video that you played indeed, but one must recognize that a politician will always try to speak to their supporters. And perhaps that was the best way the learned Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs could have spoken to his people and his base or his supporters there in New York. You see, you judge an opposition based, or any political party as a matter of fact, you judge them based on their ability to represent and to communicate with the people of the country they're from. And I can tell you that the coalition, the APNU-AFC, who is the main opposition in the Guyana Parliament, have been walking the ground and meeting with supporters, meeting with persons who are from their base, and also we have been spreading our wings in areas that are not known to be political strongholds of the APNU-AFC. And we have been received well. Persons continue to express their dissatisfaction in the manner in which the government is operating, but the Guyana situation really has to do with a
We have lost
on the government's, because there is 33 on the government side in the National Assembly and 32 on the opposition side. The one seat majority is really a winner-take-all situation. So as much as we would put up strong arguments and we would be very much willing to debate at any time with the government side, it comes down to a vote, and the vote will tell you that numbers will win. And in this case, it is 33 from the government side. And most of the time we find that they join the party that holds a seat in the House would also vote in line with the government. So it's 34 versus 31. But when you look at the work that the coalition is doing, I will draw the conclusion that it is a competent, strong, and an alternate government in Guyana. Thank you.
You know, you're right. The government has a majority, and at a vote, it probably would always win. But people are saying that you could have done better in the opposition, especially in the presentation of the budget and at other sittings when your party walked out of Parliament. Was it necessary to walk out of Parliament?
It was necessary because we were not going to sit and tolerate an action that was committed, or I should say allegedly committed, to a colleague of mine, where he was accused of hitting the Honorable Tabitha Sarabu Hali, and it was brought to the Speaker's attention. And given that we are in this era where we talk about respect for each other, we talk about the need for women in Parliament, we talk about us having a level of decorum, and given that we would have seen the behavior of that very honorable member and the way he would have operated during the sitting, it was necessary, given that, in my view, the Speaker was not willing to consider the action as immediate on his part. And we could not have sat there and allowed that to go its merry way.
But that wasn't the only time you walked out of Parliament.
We also stayed out of Parliament when we were debating the COVID-19 motion that came, and that is because at that time, and COVID still continues to be problematic in Guyana, at that time we were reluctant to sit in the Honorable House because of the I would say, the callous way the ministers of government were basically in various communities, hugging people, close proximity, and it was a sense of being scared, in my view. And I supported joining the National Assembly virtually on that front because it was necessary, in my view, for our protection. But most of us are vaccinated now, if not all. And I believe there is that sense of strength to basically be there a little bit more. But we must also remember that the People's Progressive Party, when they were in opposition, also walked out a number of times from the National Assembly. We must also remember that at the 11th Parliament, when His Excellency David Granger was sworn in as president, the PPP refused to take up their seat in the National Assembly and took it up, I think, a couple of days after, or if not a couple of months after. So they at that time didn't consider the people's business as important. I think the opposition now has a legitimate reason why we are dubbing the People's Progressive Party as installed, illegal, or illegitimate, but nonetheless we occupied our seat because it is necessary for us to consider the people's business and to basically look at the spending of the people's money and ensure that accountability is held in line.
So as you correctly stated, the PPP did walk out of Parliament quite a few times when it was in the opposition, and now you're doing tit for tat. Can some way be found where that is not necessary so that the people's business is addressed in Parliament? I mean, we can't forever go on walking out of Parliament without addressing the nation's business.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with you that we can't go on walking out of the National Assembly, and there is need for us to deal with the people's business. But sometimes the system in Guyana really is a number game, as I outlined to you earlier. And the 33, and if I may include Schuman for inclusivity's sake, the 34 will always trump the 31 unless somebody from the government side, or two or three of them, decide to vote with their conscience. The fact of the matter remains that the people's business must be dealt with and we must represent the people to the fullest. And that is why I said to you earlier that when the Parliament convened on the 1st of September 2020, we took up our seats because we recognized the importance of standing for our people, representing our people, and holding the government's feet to the fire.
So you do agree some way should
I am not getting you clear, Doctor. I'm not sure if it's my end.
just like carry on conducting the people's business.
I didn't get clear there. I'm not sure if it's my fault or yours.
I'll come back to that. Let's get Mr. Timothy Jonas, Senior Counsel, who's not a member of Parliament, and perhaps he can give us a more neutral of the of walking out of Parliament and whether the Parliament is indeed competent and effective. Mr. Jonas? We seem to have lost him as well. Yeah.
Your bandwidth
so you're hearing me,
problem. Vishnu, your voice is breaking up and your image is breaking up. I'm hearing Ganesh better, but I think a lot of what you are saying.
I
don't know.
Are you hearing me now?
Help with that. Oh, I'm hearing you, but your voice is breaking up. So I don't know if the viewers are seeing you as clearly as they need to and hearing you as clearly as.
Techie operator Devin, am I clear? Any better now?
It could be an internet problem because I'm still getting him with bad. He's still breaking up on me.
All right. So you're not hearing me at all, Timothy?
I am, but your voice intermittently will break up.
Okay. So I was just, let me try again. I'm just if you could just respond to what Ganesh Mahipal has just stated in regards to the role of the opposition.
Well, 90% of what Ganesh said, it's very hard to disagree with. The first thing he said, I wish to compliment him on his maths, is that if you got a minority in Parliament and the other side got one vote more than you, you lose every time. Now, Vishnu, you have asked this question before in this forum about an effective opposition and the kind of political mumbo jumbo that we heard Mr. Nandalal just say. But it's very nice to talk about these nice sounding cliches, these nice sounding sound bites. But I've asked you before, what tools are available to the opposition to succeed in their point of view in a parliament that the government controls by virtue of having 33 seats? Unless that question can be answered definitively, then any discussion about an effective opposition in Parliament, it's a soundbite. It's there for political gimmickry, to make your supporters rant and rave. It has no meaningful contribution. It has nothing useful. It doesn't add to the conversation because you have 33 and I have 32 and therefore I lose. There's no two ways around it. Parliament is useful for one. Let me give you an example. Parliament theoretically should be making laws. And Parliament, therefore, should have parliamentary counsel at the disposal of Parliament to assist in drafting bills to be presented to Parliament, to use their experience, to use their research methods, to use their expertise, because these are people who should be trained in legislative drafting. The parliamentary counsel who are employed in Guyana are housed in the Attorney General's chambers. They are answerable to the Attorney General. They are paid by the government. They are hired and fired within that framework. So even to the tools of drafting legislation, if the opposition, in some vain hope in some insane aspiration, thinks that they can draft and pass legislation with their 32 seats, they will have to find counsel to help them, who have the expertise to help them draft that legislation to propose with their 32 votes in that House of Parliament. So the underlying system accommodates the reality that laws passed in Parliament are passed by the government, which has the 33 seats and brooks no opposition. So I will ask you, if you want to have a discussion about an effective opposition, what tools does the opposition have in Parliament once the government has 34 seats? The only exception that has ever existed in the history of Guyana is when the PPP, when in opposition, were able to persuade some disillusioned AFC members of Parliament to cross the floor and support a no confidence motion. And the only other exception is when, under the Ramatar administration, there was a majority opposition in Parliament that unfortunately was completely wasted by the individuals who sat in Parliament enjoying a majority and doing nothing at all with it. But right now we are back to status quo. Government has 33, and unless someone can tell me definitively, usefully, what tools opposition is equipped with, then I don't want to have little political sound bites about an effective opposition.
Let's take a break and we'll come right back.
AllFromOneSupplier.com has all your grocery needs, plus all of your West Indian items. Purchase all your groceries and all your West Indian items from one place and get free delivery to your homes and free shipping. AllFromOneSupplier.com has free deliveries locally in New York and free shipping to all U.S. states. Our shoppers choose the best items, packaged nicely, and delivered to your home. We have all your grocery needs and all your West Indian items, a one-stop shop. So place all your orders on allfromonesupplier.com or call 718-551-3292. That's online at allfromonesupplier.com or call 718-551-3292. Get all your groceries and all your West Indian items from allfromonesupplier.com with free deliveries and free shipping to all U.S. states. Send your questions, comments, or issues to air on Globespan 24x7. Video or audio message from your phone and WhatsApp it to 631-782-9272. Travelspan is pleased to announce Curry Duck Curry Punta Cana 2021. Yep, it's Travelspan Curry Duck Curry with an inclusive vacation 2-in-1 on August 12th to August 16th. Special performances by Terry Godraj, Sexy Marissa, the Tassamen, and the DJs are all going to Punta Cana on August 12th to August 16th. It's fun, games, party, and curry duck curry at VIK All Inclusive Resort. All you can eat and all you can drink. Travelspan has flights from JFK, Newark, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, and Houston directly to Punta Cana. It's Travelspan Curry Duck Curry and an all-inclusive vacation. It's 2-in-1 on August 12th to August 16th in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. All-inclusive packages include air, hotel, transfers, all meals and drinks from $9.99 persons. Travelspan Curry Duck Curry is sponsored by AllFromOneSupplier.com. Dave West Indian. Call Travelspan at 212-243-0865. That's Travelspan at 212-243-0865 or book on Travelspan.com. Globespan 24x7 continues TravelSpan now has travel and shipping services. Shop online and deliver to TravelSpan to handle all of your shipping to Guyana and Trinidad. TravelSpan brings 26 years of experience in the travel business. TravelSpan will clear your items and have it available at any of our offices in Guyana or Trinidad. So go online and purchase your item, then let TravelSpan handle all the shipping. Shop and ship made easy with TravelSpan, with offices in New York, Georgetown, Berbice, West Coast Demerara, and Trinidad. TravelSpan, serving you with your airlines and shipping needs. Call in New York 718-845-0437 and in Guyana call 227-1701. That's in New York 718-845-0437 and in Guyana 227-1701. And in Trinidad call 672-2060. That's 672-2060. TravelSpan offers all airlines, such as American, Caribbean, and JetBlue. So let TravelSpan compare all airlines and offer you the best fare. Call TravelSpan at 718-845-0437 for the lowest deals between New York, Miami, and Guyana. That's TravelSpan at 718-845-0437. Call TravelSpan in New York at 718-845-0437, Georgetown at 227-1701, or Berbice at 337-4287. In New York, 718-845-0437, Georgetown 227-1701, or Berbice 337-4287, and West Coast Demerara at 269-0140. Let TravelSpan book you the best deals for you and your families. AllFromOneSupplier.com is promoting Gaisuku sugar as a way to support Guyana sugar industry. Purchase your Gaisuku sugar from AllFromOneSupplier.com along with your West Indian and American groceries. Purchasing Gaisuku sugar is a good fate gesture to help restore the sugar industry. AllFromOneSupplier.com has free shipping and delivery, and we ship to all states and free deliveries in New York. Log on to allfromonesupplier.com or call 718-551-3292. That's allfromonesupplier.com or 718-551-3292.
Are you ready for the first ever TravelSpan Curry Duck Curry competition in Punta Cana, DR, along with cricket and Tassa, brought to you by TravelSpan, AllForOneSupplier.com, Dave's West Indian, and Abby Tunes Radio. Your all-inclusive getaway includes non-stop flights, 4 nights hotel, resort services, unlimited food, drinks, and exciting live entertainment, including Tassa, Marissa, DJ Sean, Randy, NRTG, and me, Terry G, the Bangali Babu, alongside surprise guest performers. Call TravelSpan 212-243-0865 or book online at TravelSpan.com. Punta Cana, Doccore, Punta Cana, Curry Duck, get on fire!
Folks, the Nest Restaurant is the place to dine for Guyanese and Caribbean dishes. It is the best restaurant in Queens. The staff is courteous, and Dave, the owner, is always there to welcome you. So for a memorable dining experience, visit the Nest Restaurant located at 12717 101 Avenue, South Richmond Hill. Go and make a reservation today, or takeout. Call 718-847-4035. For all your plumbing, heating, and cooling needs, call Zim Mechanical Inc. at 347-456-8885. Zim Mechanical Inc. installs boilers, hot water heaters, and cooling systems. Located at 9732 Waltham Street, Jamaica, Queens, Zim Mechanical Inc. also repairs and troubleshoots your gas, heating, and cooling systems. For quotes on prices and repairs, call 347-456-8885. Globespan 24x7 continues its All From One Supplier has all your favorite meats and fish. We also have lamb, bangamary, goat, hassa, blue crab, butterfish, kingfish, snapper, and much more. In addition to our meats and fish department, we also have halal meats. So shop online today at allfromonesupplier.com with free shipping within the United States for all of your regular meats, fish, halal meats, and West Indian items. All From One Supplier is pleased to announce its online shipping for West Indian and American groceries. Order online at allfromonesupplier.com and with free shipping and deliveries to any part of the United States. Save time and energy to shop for all of your West Indian groceries from the safety of your home or office. We carry West Indian products like curry powders, meats and fish, dashing bush, pepper sauce, sodas, and your favorite snacks. All From One Supplier has it all. All From One Supplier fulfills and ships your order directly to you. So visit All From One Supplier today to start shopping or call All From One Supplier at 718-551-3292 to handle all of your West Indian grocery needs. That's All From One Supplier, 718-551-3292. Free shipping, free deliveries, or curbside pickup from allfromonesupplier.com.
Welcome back to Globespan 24x7, owned and operated by Mr. Nohar Singh with Devin Dissoon as the techie operator. We seem to be having some technical problem with my video. Therefore, I'll be using audio for the time being while we try to rectify the problem. So Mr. Jonas, in his submission, said that it's virtually impossible for an opposition to be very effective and competent, given the state of parliamentary affairs in Guyana, where once you have a majority of at least 33 seats, you seem to control and dominate proceedings. But Mr. Jonas, you know, that is reality in Guyana. It has been this way forever. We seem to have what may be called parliamentary dictatorship. So how do we deal with this problem? First, Mr. Jonas.
I think that's the question that needs to be discussed and discussed and discussed over and over. If Guyanese parliamentary dictatorship is not what Guyana needs, that we need an independent parliament. So the separation of powers is intact, and we need to get away from this centralization to the hands of a few. The question is, how do we accomplish that? How do we achieve it? And the way to achieve it is to establish, persuade the voters sufficiently that the opposition parties combined the top does not control parliament. You see, neither side likes to hear that because both sides hope and aspire to get into that wonderful seat where they have complete control. And when they have complete control, we see the results. We see the centralization of power and the corruption increases. We see bills passed that I think most Guyanese wouldn't like. The Army Green Bill passed. The bill that is now being used to attack anybody who comments, the cybercrime bill, anybody who comments on Facebook, being used and abused by the government of the day, just as it was previously. So an independent parliament would put a stop to that by ensuring that the laws are fair for the protection of the majority rather than for the empowerment of the government. And that's what we need.
But how has this government over the last 11 months denied the opposition opportunities to address concerns in Parliament? I mean, have they denied them speech, participation? Ganesh? Ganesh, are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you there. Thank you. I had to unmute the mic. First of all, I would have loved to see and hear Lennox Schumann, the Honorable Deputy Speaker, advancing those very points that Mr. Jonas has advanced. And one would recall and know that Mr. Schumann, the Deputy Speaker, represents the party of which ANOG is a part of. And if my memory serves me correctly, Mr. Jonas is the chairman of ANOG, so I am sure he can make that case to the Deputy Speaker, Lennox Schumann, so that he can also hold that position, which is a position being held by the current cadre of young leaders in the APNU AFC. But if I may add, to solve that problem, there needs to be political maturity on both sides of the divide. And I say that to say to you that in the Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, as soon as you asked the question, I actually reached for the Constitution, and I'm forced to read Article 13 of the Constitution, which speaks to political inclusivity. And it says in Article 13 that the principal objective of the political system of the state is to establish an inclusionary democracy by providing increasing opportunities for the participation of citizens and their organizations in the management and decision-making process of the state, with particular emphasis on those areas of decision-making that directly affect their well-being. If there is deeper focus on Article 13 of our Constitution that speaks to inclusionary democracy, and we can look past the petty politics and start paying attention to the people of our country, I think we're going to see a more effective and efficient governance system and government. And I say government to include the executive, the parliament, the National Assembly, and the judiciary. And I want to make a comment on Timothy's earlier statement, where he basically said that there is no meaningful engagement. I'm not quoting him word for word, but he's basically saying because of that number game, the PPP in this instance will always win. I believe that the opposition and the government, they speak to their base. which is good. They're holding their base. But also, we need to recognize that there is a percentage of people in our country who are on the fence, if I may use that term, and who are basically persons who would vote based on issues and vote based on strong representation and not cheap politics. And our presence in the parliament and our cause in terms of advancing our arguments in the motions and debating and asking questions and so on is not only to show our base or to prove that we are a competent alternative government, but rather to show that we meaningfully engage in activities to represent the cause, and that is for all the people of this country. So I believe one way of making meaningful contribution is by you being in the National Assembly, representing the people of this country, standing up for what is facts, and lessen the amount of cheap political games that is occurring. And I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not happening on both sides. It is happening on both sides. Perhaps another issue that one should recognize is the seat that the joint party holds is a seat in the opposition, and one would expect that their level of constructive criticism would be one where they participate in constructive criticism, as opposed to having their seat occupied by a member that is working with the government of the day, that is collecting in excess of 800 or somewhere thereabout $800,000 as an advisor to the government, and is basically not seeing it necessary to call out the government on actions that are unbecoming. Take, for example, the Parliament of Guyana did not sit for close to 3 months, and not a single word came from the Honorable Deputy Speaker, Lennox Schumann, someone who is supposed to be advancing the party's position, and not just Lennox Schumann's.
You're still there?
Other two political parties that make up the joint. So there is need for the opposition in totality to continue their work, and there is need for them to continue to advance their position. But I think greater there is need for the government to practice and pay Article 13 of the Constitution. Thank you.
But you know, this problem is not going to be resolved until there is constitutional change, and we are not even sure we're going to have constitutional change because no commission has been established after 11 months. I'm sure the PPP would do that very soon, but until that is done, we have to work with the current constitutional arrangement we have, which gives the government the majority, 33, and the opposition, 31, 32. And so we got to find common ground in which we must have some effective representation in Parliament from both sides, not just on the opposition side alone. So Mr. Jonas is saying for someone to show how could this be done, but it has to be done. There is no other way. It's not like there is a magic bullet that can be shot and the problem is resolved. So Mr. Jonas, you have a solution to that?
Timothy,
the first thing I'll tell you is that one thing is clear. One thing is history has shown us unequivocally and irrefutably is that the solution does not lie in the existing leadership on either side. You see, Ganesh was honest enough to say, yes, it's on both sides that there have been failings in this effort to represent the whole nation rather than to represent your own base. But the examples are so stark and so consistent, and the extremes that both parties go to hold on to power are so unbelievable, that what we see here is a grab by people who are personally ambitious and for whom the country comes second to personal aspirations, to the need to hold on to power. We talk about the Constitution, but what Ganesh just read, the purpose of this thing is inclusivity and all of that, blah, blah, blah. Sounds nice, but it's nothing more than a soundbite, just like what Mr. Nandalal rolled off in New York. Because when you look for the efficacy for how you implement it, you start to realize that both sides have ignored this thing in its entirety, and both sides can do so with impunity when they're in power. Let me tell you something. That Constitution says the leader of the opposition will give the president 6 names, and he will appoint from those 6 names the chairman of the GCOM, of the Elections Commission. That's what the Constitution says. It's English. It's simple language. Look what Mr. Granger did. We had to go to the CCJ for those judges to tell us, in this ridiculous little banana republic where the two sides have destroyed the country to such an extent, that the Constitution says the opposition gives you 6 names and you pick one. You cannot reject all 6 names and go and pick your own person. Imagine we have to go to the CCJ for that. We have to go to the CCJ to hear what half of 65 is. Now, if we have situations where we ignore that same Constitution that we hold up and read so righteously, then where are we going? And let me also say this is not one-sided. We have an attempted centralization of power by firing independent people on a police service commission. We have an attempt to silence people by arresting them on the cybercrime legislation and this kind of thing. But although that is happening now, let us not forget Winston Brassington, Ashley Singh, the fraud charges brought against the president, the control by the government of the day of the police force. And let me challenge anybody to say that the government, whether it was APNU or PPP, is working for the good of the country, or is the government working to empower itself? And until Guyanese realize where the good of the country lies, in the decentralization of power, in the embracing of the entire society, even in his response, when Ganesh acknowledged both sides have their base. He didn't say ethnic base, but I'll say it, ethnic base. And then he says that there are a few who are sitting on the fence. I found that expression interesting, because those few aren't sitting on the fence. Those few are the independent thinking voters who have rejected that ethnic-based position that we all take in our politics. And they were enough of them through AFC to give a majority to the opposition in 2011. And it's not that they're sitting on the fence, because they gave APNU the government in 2015. And then those same thinking people saw the visionless kind of leadership that we got. They saw the vindictive revenge politics. They saw the evisceration of all the authorities that had been peopled by PPP folk back in the PPP day, but all of them thrown out, and now peopled by APNU folk. For the good of the country or for the good of the party? You decide. And those same thoughtful, thinking voters voted APNU out of power, and then saw the travesty that happened. Now, I will ask you, what do those thinking, thoughtful voters who have rejected ethnic politics, where do they go now? What do they hope for the country? And can anyone say that the good of the in one of the two parties that loves that power when they hold on to it and centralize it? And where does the good of the country lie?
Dr. Vishnu, if you would.
Yeah, with that, let's take a break. Let's see if we can fix this problem. We'll come right back, and then we'll begin with Ganesh Mahipal.
You can now have all your groceries delivered to your home. AllFromOneSupplier.com has all your grocery needs, plus all of your West Indian items. Purchase all your groceries and all your West Indian items from one place and get free delivery to your homes and free shipping. AllFromOneSupplier.com has free deliveries locally in New York and free shipping to all U.S. states. Our shoppers choose the best items, packaged nicely, and delivered to your home. We have all your grocery needs and all your West Indian items, a one-stop shop. So place all your orders on allfromonesupplier.com or call 718-551-3292. That's online at allfromonesupplier.com or call 718-551-3292. Get all your groceries and all your West Indian items from allfromonesupplier.com with free deliveries and free shipping to all U.S. states.
Welcome back to Globespan 24x7. Vishnu Bisram here, your moderator. Globespan 24x7 is owned and operated by Mr. Noor Singh. We are discussing the state of the political opposition and plan of the political opposition. With us tonight, our guest, Ganesh Mahipal, Member of Parliament for the opposition, APNU, and Mr. Timothy Jonas, who's chair of ANUG. Mr. Jonas just spoke, and now we have the contribution of Mr. Ganesh Mahipal. Mr. Ganesh Mahipal.
Thank you very much, Doc. You know, I listened there to Tim, and I believe, to my own opinion, that Timothy is a very good lawyer, and I think he tried to hoodwink me there by canvassing for the ANOG indirectly as probably the best alternative, of course. But I'm forced to remind him that there was a big guy oil scan that involved one of his members, Mr. Blair, and I don't remember or saw that he said anything to that effect. And also, I think it would have been good on his part to also accept that even if we want to play the acceptance game, that there is fault that lies within individuals. And sometimes we tend to categorize political parties in totality based on individuals' misbehavior or bad behavior. So sometimes we have to call a spade a spade. And you know, as a lawyer also, I expected to hear from the Lord Senior Counsel that the appeal court and the CCJ are courts that are available at our disposal. And it is for all Guyanese, whoever wishes to seek redress and whoever wishes to make their point. And the fact that the matter went, the matter specifically that Mr. Jonas spoke of, the appointment of the GCOM chairperson, the fact that the matter went to the highest court of this land, or the apex court of our democracy, and they made a pronouncement, President Granger followed the guidance of the highest court. He did not say to himself that I am the big boss or I am the president and I'm going to stay with Mr. Patterson. He removed Mr. Patterson. He followed the direction of the court. The list was submitted to him and he extracted Claudette Singh as the chairperson for GCOM. So I am not going to sit and accept part of the story. I think the full story must be shared with us. And in all fairness to the Court of Appeal, we do recognize that the Court of Appeal is becoming very, very popular in decision making of our country and its constitution. And private citizens are also going there, which is their democratic right. The People's Progressive Party goes to court and they follow through to the CCJ. Does that mean that the APNU, AFC, or the PNC should not? Of course not. It is the highest decision-making body of our land in terms of our judiciary. And Mr. Timothy Jonas, Senior Counsel, I know would accept that it is at our disposal and there's nothing wrong in a democracy for us to use it. I also want to capture the point where he spoke of the persons who are voting, and he did make reference to 2015. Those are the persons who voted for the coalition, and in 2020, those are the persons who voted against the coalition. I am not going to agree with that on the basis of that national recount exercise that we had, which Timothy Jonas, Senior Counsel, participated in. And I don't think he is going to doubt that that election, having experienced the recount, that election was riddled with irregularities, abnormalities, fraud in its entirety, so to speak. I know that because I sat there as a recount agent. I was stationed in Station 5, as Senior Counsel Timothy Jonas knows, with his good friend Jonathan Yearwood, who left the party of ANOG for reasons that we know was articulated in a newspaper article. And there were 49 ballot boxes that had votes, but no statutory documentation to verify those votes. That is not a claim. That is something that was found. Everybody knows that. There were a number of missing oaths of identity. There were a number of unsigned oaths of identity. The GCOM chairwoman, based on our representation, wrote to the chief immigration officer requesting information on the names that were objected to, and the chief immigration officer confirmed that there were names ticked off on the official list of electors as people who voted, even though they were not.
Yeah, but Ganesh.
I don't know if I'm getting some feedback there. Are you still hearing me?
Yeah, I am hearing you. Go ahead. You please go ahead.
And there were a lot of unusual activities that were unearthed in the national recount. So it is very unfair for us to sit here and draw a conclusion as to who would have voted and how they would have voted. And you know, it is very strange also as political leaders, where the People's Progressive Party and all the other small parties that participated in the elections and in the national recount, it is very unfortunate that the People's Progressive Party want the opposition, including Mr. Jonas' political party, want the opposition to recognize them, for them to participate in inclusionary democracy or to start having a talk for the benefit of Guyanese. The fact of the matter is they are sitting in government. Irrespective of whether they are illegal or installed, they are sitting in government. They control the coffers and they control the public purse. When a budget has to be put together, they put together the budget. Whenever they have to make decisions that are state-oriented, they make the decision. The fact that the opposition is in parliament and is showing that willingness to participate in debates and discussion with motions and the likes, it is necessary for the Irfan Ali-led administration to recognize that there must be, for the people's benefit of this country, that need for consultation and collaboration for the benefit of the people. But you cannot want to put a precondition or have a prerequisite where you want us to say that you are legal when there are thousands of evidence to support that the election was marred with fraud. And Timothy knows that too. So I'll pause there because I'm sure Timothy would want to say something in rebuttal.
Yeah,
so
I don't
give
know.
him that
I don't know
chance.
if he would agree with you that the election was marred by fraud, but surely, Ganesh, you would agree that if the statements of polls were presented that very evening or the next day on both sides, would we not have avoided all of these problems and having to go for a recount?
But it would have been a disservice to the people of Guyana. So I am very happy that the statements of poll was not produced. I am very happy because it has allowed the nation to see where the fraud is. And for years, you have been hearing the People's Progressive Party talking about PNC being fraudsters, PNC rigging elections. For years, they have been saying that. But not once have we seen any shred of evidence to support that the PNC has rigged an election, save and except for the talks where the likes of Jagdeo and all the others would say PNC rig elections. But here now we have evidence that came out of a state of a recount process. I welcome that recount process. And you know, the election results
but
were not
initially your party opposed the recount. It was for it, then it was against it, then it was for it, then it's against it.
Well, I don't know of my party. I don't know of my party not being in favor of the recount. In fact,
Well,
the
it went to
recount
the court
was
to stop it.
channeled. The party's leader actually embraced the recount. I don't know of the party taking a position because I am a central executive member of the party and I cannot remember sitting at any table saying that or publicly making any commentary that we don't support the recount. In fact, I know that we embraced it and participated fully in it. And I say again for emphasis, I welcomed that recount. The amount of things that I've seen, the amount of things that I have witnessed, it has really, really empowered me to basically be a better watchdog at our elections going forward. And I'm very, very grateful for that national recount. And I'm not sure that after that recount that it will be easy on the People's Progressive Party to continue with their rigging.
Look, I didn't want to go in the direction of elections. You took it in that direction. So I have to give Timothy Jonas the opportunity to respond
Definitely,
to your allegations and accusations. Mr. Jonas?
Sure. We had the elections in March, 2nd March. When we had the elections at each place of poll, you had APNU representatives and you had PPP representatives. And they all took home their statements of poll, because everybody got a copy.
And you also had observers, if I'm not mistaken, party agents.
Well, Vishnu, I think you need to remember, Vishnu, I think you need to remember that you're a moderator.
Yeah, okay.
So stay in the middle.
All right, okay.
Ganesh has been kind enough not to interrupt me, and that's why I haven't interrupted him, despite
Thank you.
the unbelievable statement he just made. But I'd like a chance to respond to it now.
Okay.
So on the 2nd of March, had elections, and PPP took home their statements of poll, APNU took home their statements of poll. And APNU said to the people, we have won these elections. We have counted these statements of poll. And we have won these elections. They had celebration. They went on whole party in Lamar Street. And then on the 4th of March, Mingo tried to declare on the basis of those statements of poll that APNU said they had. Mingo tried to declare a victory in Region 4 for APNU to such an extent that APNU would win the overall election. So we have to start this discussion in chronological order. Day after elections, APNU say they win, they got a statements of poll. APNU personnel throughout the recount said, we'll produce them at the right time. Politics is important and we have to keep our statements of poll. We will produce them, but our statements of poll show we won. They went on TV, 2 of them from AFC, disgraceful people, to say the statements of poll say we won. And then the recount started. So the first question to be asked is that episode on the 4th of March, when somebody tried to declare a victory for APNU on the basis of those statements of poll, was that for the good of the country or was that a rig? Then we have the recount. And at this recount, what is being counted are those same ballots, not different ballots, those same ballots that APNU have said to their people. APNU have said to their people that we won on those ballots. And the count starts to show something different. Region 1, Region 2, Region 3, same thing. Region 5, Region 6, Region 7, Region 8, Region 9, Region 10, same thing, all the statements of poll correct. And then Region 4. And in that region, different results start coming out. And APNU starts asking questions in the recount. And Ganesh is right, I was there. Every single question, uncorroborated, unsubstantiated, manufactured. Every single question. No support, no proof, supposition, meant to mislead, meant to undermine the democracy of our country. That APNU, and that this APNU gentleman is saying he holds higher than his personal interest or his party's interest. Meant to do that. So that when the Region 4 recount came out different from what was declared on the 4th of March by Mingo, those people, instead of saying to their people, we have lied to you, when we said that those statements of polls showed we won, that was a lie. They then came and told a different lie. They said, look at all these irregularities we're pointing out. They conveniently forget that it's the same pieces of paper we recounted, that I sat there and recounted, that all of us recounted, that showed exactly the same results that the statements of poll published by the PPP, which I oppose, were the true statements, and that the declaration made for Region 4 was a damn lie, an attempt to undermine our democracy, to restore a dictatorship by these people who love our country. And that's what I got to hear. So that when we hear, oh, I'm glad there was a recount, I don't even know to answer that. Because the only thing that the recount has demonstrated was the first lie. Now, when I hear a liar lie, you can't come and tell me another lie, because I'm not a fool. Once bitten, twice shy. So first you gotta explain to me the lie when you said we won, and we have our SOPs and our SOPs show we won. And if you can't explain that lie, don't tell me another lie about irregularities, because I was there and I saw the count.
Okay, I just have one final word from Ganesh, and I just want to move on. Any word from you, Ganesh?
No, well, all I would like to say is that the election results were declared on SORs, that is statements of recount, and the statement of recount was processed through tabulation of merely votes, when we all know that the Order 60 of 2020 spoke to a 4 process that included verification of those votes and authenticity of the votes. There is still matter 2 cases in the court to speak to the validity of those votes, but it does not take away from what was actually found in those boxes, which includes votes with that cannot be verified and a whole host of other irregularities. But the point is, coming back to our discussion, has to do with how, as you would have said before, how is it that we get the opposition and government to basically work? And I maintain again that it comes
and I want to go back and
to Article
rather than focus on the attempted rigging of the election. I mean, the interlocutors, the 3 interlocutors who came said, look, it was a true reflection of the electorate, and the court will decide that, because you are in court in an appeal, even though your petitions were thrown out. So let's get back now to the centrality of the topic. The state of the opposition, the plan of the opposition. We have discussed primarily the state of the opposition. What's the plan of the opposition now, Ganesh?
Thank you. Well, of course, the plan of the opposition is to get into government. And we have to do that by ensuring that we continue to represent our people and strategize in that direction. But more so, we have to, at this point in time, hold the government's feet to the fire. So we have to ensure that we have an effective, in this case, I will say, Public Accounts Committee that is responsible for the examination of the spending of taxpayers' money. We have to ensure that we stay informed as to the decisions that are taken by government, and to basically call them out where there are irregularities and actions that can be deemed not proper. You know that there is a problem with the COVID cash grant, where they were supposed to be giving every household $25,000. That has not been the case. There is issues surrounding the COVID-19 vaccine, and more specifically the Sputnik V vaccine, where the opposition is asking for information and the government is withholding those information, or probably they don't have the information. We have a government that already paid over $618 million for an additional boat, a shark boat, or the boats that the president would normally travel on. 600 and something million dollars already paid for it as a first payment. That is not even the final payment. I don't know if the boat that the president travels with, if it's small and they need a larger one, but do you consider that as a priority spending? We have situations where the government is basically going to set up a parallel security arm or security force to, or a unit within, well, it's budgeted for under the Guyana Defense Force, but the Honorable Gail Teixeira exposed in Parliament that it is a crime-fighting unit. Are they saying that they have no comfort in the existing law entity that is tasked with fighting crime? That is the Guyana Police Force. We have so many issues that are currently occurring in our country under the administration that requires our attention, and for us to expose it in the best way possible so that our people can see what is happening, and they will be the ultimate judge. They will have to be the ultimate judge, but there's certainly certain spending of the government that we cannot let go, and we cannot sit idly by and not say anything on it. So our duty, I would say, is to primarily be a good set of people that can expose the corruption of the People's Progressive Party.
And you do have that power. I want to come back and talk about the power you have to expose the opposition. Let's give Mr. Jonas a chance to address that question as well.
A lot of what Dennis said, I agree with. There's been profligate spending. The first thing that the government did was increase the debt ceiling so they could borrow more to spend more, borrowing against the expectation of petroleum revenue. And a lot of the expenditure is questionable. I have said before on this program that it was necessary to get the COVID drugs quickly, and that possibly gives an explanation for paying more than the going price for it. But there needs to be transparency, and I don't think there's been sufficient transparency. There has been information about the authenticity of the drugs, and I think everyone seems to be satisfied about that. But when you've bypassed procurement systems, you need to show that there's no kickback. You need to show where the money spent, how it was approved. And if you don't do that, if you're reticent in any regard in that respect, then you're not doing your duty to your country. You're not acting for the good of the country. This isn't the first time. There's a water cannon parked up in some police place that was bought for crowd control before 2015. And I see Ganesh smiling. But meantime, we got to remember a certain Durban Park disaster. We got to remember money spent on Carifesta Avenue for no good of anybody. We got to remember expenditure that has helped nobody, increase bureaucracy. The government was never as large as it was during the past 5 years. The amount of advisors that the visionless Granger had was unbelievable, and with all that advice, still visionless. So it's on both sides, it cuts both ways, but it is true. And how do you temper that? How do you stop it? You can only stop it if that expenditure is managed with both sides being able to scrutinize. Both sides cannot scrutinize under the existing legal structure. The same Guy Oil Board that Ganesh talked about, that has been corrupt for so long, and I'm sure he will remember the big story when it was found that GDF was siphoning off fuel. That board was a PPP board before 2015, and then they were thrown out en masse, and it was a PNC board after 2015. And then they fly in the ointment. The one independent on the board was made a scapegoat and thrown out. And Ganesh wants to rely on a finding by the PPP that he doesn't support, or a report that he hasn't seen, to draw a conclusion, because he's playing politics. But guess what? The end result of that scapegoat is that now there is a PPP board in Gaioil with no scrutineers, with nothing to give transparency to their processes. And I'm sure that even Ganesh will agree that there is scope for corruption. So those things have to change.
But Ganesh, what exactly was the issue with the procurement of the vaccine? I mean, it's an emergency situation. What's the concern of the opposition? What really happened that worries them?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, that I took the Sputnik V vaccine after doing some research on my own. And I also know of a number of other colleagues and friends who took the Sputnik V vaccine. In fact, my personal doctor advised me along the line of taking the Sputnik V vaccine also. But what bothers us as the political opposition is when we learned that the vaccine did not come directly to our country from the manufacturer. And it is very unfortunate that we had to learn it after grilling the minister with questions. This is a matter of urgency, which I agree with, and it concerns our nation's health. And any prudent, right-thinking minister of government that holds such a portfolio should have told the people of Guyana that we were not able, if that is the case, we were not able to procure these vaccines from the manufacturer directly, but we were told to go to the sheikh from UAE, United or UEA, United Arab Emirates. When we learned that through the rigorous questioning in Parliament, it raised an eyebrow. And I believed that the minister should have told us these information before, as opposed to us getting it through that means, because of the nature of this pandemic. And more so, during that period, there was information coming out from Mexico, which suggests that there were fake Sputnik V vaccines on the market. And that worried us even more. And I think that should have caused the minister to even even see it necessary to release the information to the public domain, but he still did not. And then we also know that there was an article in a Norwegian newspaper that spoke to corruption and associated a gentleman that is aligned to the sheikh with corruption. So these things really sparked us in the opposition and caused us to wonder, why is it that the Honorable Minister of Health, why is it that he is not finding it necessary to be more open and transparent when it comes to these vaccines? Now, I am going to agree with Timothy that it was a necessary spending because of the urgency, but everything that had to do with these vaccines should have been transparent, and the opposition should not have had to go and milk the cow for the milk. Unfortunately, that is what we had to do. And Timothy said earlier that there is information that is out on the Sputnik V vaccine. I'm assuming that he's associating that letter that was released by the Ministry of Health. But what worries me about that letter is that the salutation of the letter speaks to Dear Sirs, SIRS, but then I only see one person in the address, in the inner address. So obviously somebody may have been erased out from who the letter was sent, or maybe the letter was hurriedly put together, because we do see that on the very day when the opposition wrote and when the opposition spoke about the COVID-19 Sputnik V vaccine, that is the date that the letter carries. So one begins to worry if this letter was hurriedly put together, and if the minister had, and it is clear evidence that the minister did not have these letters or this particular letter in his possession at the time when the Sputnik V vaccine was in Guyana, or was being administered here in Guyana. Also, the fact that this Sputnik V vaccine was not approved by the World Health Organization is more reason why the minister should have been very much transparent concerning the vaccines. Because obviously, with all of these things that are happening, one has to worry. You're putting the vaccine in one's self. I was asked by some persons on the ground on outreaches, why don't you guys take the government to court for their action where they administered a vaccine that is not WHO approved? And I'm not sure if that is the thinking of many other persons, because you don't know what the effects could be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line if this vaccine does not get WHO approval, or if it does. But whether it gets it or not.
If I may interrupt you, I recall your opposition leader, I think I read it, that your opposition leader accepted the vaccine, that it was okay. Its authenticity was confirmed. Isn't that right?
No, the authenticity was not confirmed as yet. It's only that letter. When Timothy spoke earlier, and he just agreed with us that it's only that letter that is there that speaks to any form of exposure, any form of being transparent from the PPP side. It's just that simple letter that they sent out. But what we did as a responsible opposition was to write the manufacturer of these vaccines directly, and we asked them to provide us with that guidance, whether this vaccine that is in Guyana, based on the information that was let out by Dr. Frank, whether this is really and truly, I think it's the Gamal, I can't pronounce the long name, but we wrote directly to the organization trying to get the information, and it's unfair and it's unfair that is what we have to do when we are supposed to have a responsible government, when we're supposed to have a responsible minister of health. This is not us asking for something that exposes something internal in our country. This is the nation's wealth we're talking about, and nation's wealth in terms of it's the nation's health. So it is absolutely necessary, without any doubt. There is the need for full, not majority, not 33 versus 32, or not 34 versus 31. There is need for a full, transparent exposure in terms of the legitimacy, the authenticity, the veracity, whichever word we want to use, of the Sputnik V vaccine. And that letter that I saw does not confirm with me that it's legitimate. I question that letter because it was written on the very day that we raised our eyebrow, and there are some mistakes in it that I think could have been probably what you call it, typographical, but I cannot give them the benefit of the doubt because of what we have heard from Mexico and from the Norwegian newspaper. And that is what worries us as an opposition, the authenticity of the vaccine.
And that's why you filed the no confidence motion against the health minister.
Well, that is one of many other reasons. That is one of many other reasons.
Right,
we
so
believe that he has not been.
Let's hear Mr. Jonas, and I'll get back with you.
I was really hoping that Ganesh would also say that, given that his party was in power and interferes directly with the various embassies,
politics again.
and therefore might have some access that the ordinary folk don't have, that in addition to writing the manufacturer, who may or may not respond, he could have used whatever past goodwill they have to try to interface through the ambassador, through the embassy, and to get a response whether there was, because indeed the opposition needed to inquire. I'm happy to hear they've made their independent inquiry, but they equally owe a duty to say what is the upshot of their inquiry. And I haven't heard whether there's a yay or a nay, or the extent of their inquiry. Wasn't a reach made through the embassy Was there any response? Was any of the personal contacts that someone like Cara Greenwich must have used to try to get a response, to try to get real information? Was an outreach made to the same Saudi UAE where that sheikh came from, asking for information? Was an outreach made to the Norwegian paper, saying this is our position? What does your investigation show to help us? That kind of transparency would have helped, and hopefully it is ongoing and people will hear something from both sides. But there must be transparency, and there isn't.
On the no confidence motion, Ganesh.
But before you go there, Doc, before you go there, give me 10 seconds.
Please.
I'm happy with what Timothy said. I fully supported that that there needs to be, we need to have outreaches to all of these agencies. And that is why if there is this collaborative effort with all the opposition political parties, whether you're in parliament or not, then we will be able to, put all hands on deck to get things done. So I take the opportunity to extend the olive branch there to the chairman of ANOG for him to be involved with the APNU AFC and to encourage his representative in the National Assembly, the Deputy Speaker, to recognize that he's an opposition member of Parliament. Thank you.
This is the third time, Vishnu. I didn't respond the first two times, but I'm going to respond this time. Ganesh is seeming to try to blur Lennox Schumann with Anok, and I'll ask him not to do that. I'm not going to respond directly to it, but he knows better, and we all know better. Lennox Schumann is not Anok.
Yeah, I'm sure he does also, huh?
That's playing politics.
Yeah, Schumann has his own movement and his own party, yeah?
Schumann is sitting there on a joiner list. He's not sitting there on his own votes. He's sitting there with the strength of Anok also.
We'll leave that discussion for some other time. The health minister is quite popular in Guyana, and he has received kudos for his handling of COVID. In Trinidad, for example, the situation is worse in terms of the casualties. Guyana has procured the most vaccines of all Caribbean countries. So surely one would have to give him some credit for that achievement. Wouldn't you agree?
Are you asking me?
I am asking you, Ganesh, yeah, because you have filed, your party has filed the motion of no confidence to remove him from his ministry.
Hello?
Yeah, you're not hearing me?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us, Mr. Maipal?
Yes. I'm hearing you better there. Was the question directed to me?
Yes, it was directed to you, yes. Yeah.
Thank you. You actually cut off just before you were going to say who to answer the question. First of all, the government, I believe, would have treated this pandemic the same way in terms of ensuring that we get the vaccines for our people. I am not going to say that ANOG would have done better than the APNUFC or the APNUFC different from the PPP. The priority was to get the vaccines for our people. And that is what I believe any government would have done. We need to recognize that when COVID came to Guyana, it was in March of 2020, just after the election, and then we had that 5 months of drama. There was no budget in our country. There was absolutely no budget. And ministries and agencies were spending 1/12 of the monies they were spending before. There was also the whole election saga that was unfolding, which caused much tension and uneasiness in our country. So you had economic activities also that were basically at a standstill, if I may put it that way. But still, we had a government that only had 21 deaths. Only had 21 deaths in 5 months. March, April, May, June, July. 21 deaths. There were limited testings, as some are saying, but it's only because the status of the country and the availability, because during that period there were a number of lockdowns. There were a lot of countries were uncertain as to how they had to approach the situation. Borders were locked, testing kits and testing materials were limited in our country and were having difficulties getting in and so on. But we had 21 deaths in 5 months. Let's compare that to 5 months of the People's Progressive Party,
No, but it's
where
not
they
a fair
came to government
comparison.
in August.
It wouldn't be a fair comparison. I mean, infections became more widespread. People were moving more,
Why?
interacting.
But why? Exactly my point, Doc. Why? Because there was not, in my view, a proper management in place for the pandemic. Now, of course, I recognize that you could not have kept people locked away all the time and the stringent measures and so on. You cannot continue with it. That's so robust all the time. But the fact of the matter remains that you have 5 months of the coalition versus 5 months of the PPP. And you cannot value people's life to the point where you're saying that it cannot be compared when over 100 and something persons died within that 5 months. When you had within that very 5 months a rash opening of the economy, when you had the police not enforcing the COVID-19 measures in a strong and stringent manner. The COVID measures were there. They were there on paper, but then you had people who could have called a friend. I remember a friend called me when the police went to his home in August, and I told him I can't do nothing. I said 2 reasons I can't do nothing. One, I don't subscribe to the activity that you are holding, and the second one, I'm not in government. But he went on and called another friend who's a mutual friend of ours from the PPP who's holding a ministerial position, and the police was asked to let go. So the point I am making is that the organs that were responsible to ensure that the COVID-19 measures were enforced, and the fact that there was this lackluster and lackadaisical approach caused us to be where we are. And I believe the People's Progressive Party has already signaled their no confidence in Minister Frank Anthony, because he is surrounded by two former ministers, Dr. Leslie Ramsamy and Berry Ramsaran. And he's also has a member of parliament there, Dr. Vishnu Mahadio, who's also a medical doctor. So he has 3 watchmen with him. So the PPP already signaled a no confidence against him. And the same goes for Robertson Ben. The PPP already signaled a no confidence in Robertson Ben also, because it is who came to parliament to establish a new unit to fight crime, because they simply don't have any form of confidence in Robertson Ben and the police force currently. So the PPP said to us that they don't have confidence, and we are just carrying out the formality of getting them out.
Oh, so you are doing their work for them?
Basically.
Mr. Jonas?
I agree with Ganesh that his government, when in office, and even after when they should have left office, but remained and were very, very careful about the lockdown. When the CARICOM folk agreed to the recount and said they wanted to bring their expert scrutineers, the government said, oh no, you can't bring 10, one for each room of the recount. You can only bring 4 because we have COVID. And when the European Union folks said they wanted to bring back scrutineers to observe the recount, the government said, oh no, we have COVID. We can't allow European Union scrutineers to come back to observe this recount. And when the Carter Center said, we want to send folk to watch the recount and observe the election, the government of the day said, oh no, we have COVID. We can't allow the Carter Center observers to come back and watch the recount. They were very, very careful to keep the borders locked so that these dangerous folk couldn't come back to watch the recount. But the reality is, Vishnu, and you've said it, that the flu spreads in a curve. One person sneezes, 4 people get the cold. Those 4 people sneeze, 16 people get the cold. 16 people sneeze, 132. So you see that rise, and you can't compare the situation in March when one lady flew in from New York with her family, and it was virtually unknown, to a situation when it had been able to spread. That being said, I agree that there needs to be the transparency, and we need to see where these drugs come from with the authenticity, and I'm glad steps are being made. And we need to see how the contract was agreed, where the money was spent, how it was spent, so that we know there's no kickback. And so far, enough has not been done in that regard. It's true. In terms of the no confidence motion, political gimmickry again. But I do remember 2 years ago, a lady in Parliament said, "Bring it on." So we'll see what happens.
Okay, well, with that, we have pretty much run out of time. So I'll just ask you all to make your final comment. Since you have the floor, Timothy, you want to finish up, and then Ganesh will have the last word.
Sure. Every time the question comes up about the opposition, whether it's PPP opposition, the system of opposition, everyone nods solemnly to agree that yes, there needs to be this inclusivity, there needs to be the transparency, those nice high sounding words. But nobody condescends to the nuts and bolts of how to do it. And it's time we start having conversations about the nuts and bolts of how to have transparency, how to have scrutiny, how to involve the opposition in the processes. Because it's all well and good to go to New York to say we want an effective opposition, but that doesn't say anything. It doesn't move us forward. Both sides, when in power, have refused, have declined to share, have declined to disclose, have enjoyed the benefits, and there has been rampant corruption because of it. Unless we discuss the nuts and bolts of how to change that, it will not change.
Thank you, sir. Ganesh, do you agree?
Thanks, Doctor. First of all, the discussion centered around the status and plans of the opposition. Of course, we diverted a little, but I believe
you did
that
it, not
the
us.
opposition. Yes, yes. But I enjoyed the discussion. I must say that it's always good to be in the company of Timothy Jonas, a law and attorney at law, senior counsel, and of course yourself. The opposition has a number of young people who are first timers in the National Assembly. The People's Progressive Party also has a number of young people who are first timers in the National Assembly. And I would like to appeal to your listeners and to the wider viewership to judge them on their performance, whether it is on our side or on the PPP side. Judge the young people on their performance. I was very happy to see so many young people, myself included, because I do believe that our country is at a crossroad where I see Timothy laughing when I said I'm included. I do believe that our country is at a crossroad where the next generation is taking the reins of power, where the next generation is basically going to lead us going forward. And there is need for them to be constructively criticized, and also they must be given praises where it is due. But we also need to recognize that they need guidance on both sides, and it would be nice if constructive guidance and constructive criticism can be put in the press and wherever else, letters and what's not. And I want to say thank you to Timothy for a healthy discourse, and thank you, Doc, for having me on the program. It has been my pleasure, and I look forward to joining you sometime again.
Yeah, thank you again, Ganesh Mahipal, Member of Parliament for APNU, and Mr. Timothy Jonas, Chairman of ANUG. Thank you both, gentlemen, for spending your time with us this evening, and by Mr. Nahar Singh with Devin Bassoon as the Chief Technical Engineer. I am Vishnu Bisram. I do apologize for the issue we've had with the video earlier on. Thank you again. Good night and goodbye. See you again soon.
Thank you.